this TFS Pocket, we're Esports now. This is the Frame Savers. If you're new to this podcast, we're a retro video gaming podcast that focuses on speedrunning. Speedrunning, if you're not aware, is a hobby where we try to beat video games as quickly as possible using any tips, tricks, glitches, and strategies wherever possible. And today we're sort of departing from our normal format. Usually it's sort of the focus of one game or a group of games or some specific event. But for this, I really wanted to sort of dive into something interesting that's been going on in the community. And it's not new. To say that this is something that's brand new wouldn't be exactly correct. I want to talk a little bit about this idea of esports team signing speedrunners. I think that this is something that's really foreign as far as the speedrunning community is concerned. And there's a lot of confusion about it. And so I asked both Andy and GrandPOOBear, who are both on Team Allegiance, to join me. So how are you guys doing today?
Good, wonderful, man. Happy to be here again.
GrandPOOBear, I feel like you're still the reigning champion for most times we've had a single guest on.
Yeah,
and this is only bolstering it.
Technically my third time or fourth time, I think. Fifth time, maybe? And
maybe fifth.
And as far as that's concerned, I've also hosted it once. So
that's true. You were the host of the Frame Savers one time, so that's
the
perfect.
host of the Frame Savers April Fool's edition. So
yeah, that was really good. You just got back from Calithon, right?
Oh yes, that was great.
How was that?
Oh, it was a really good event. The venue this year was awesome. We got to go to Bebo offices, which they're like a streaming platform. And I see why they would have us there because, you know, obviously they got to pitch us all their stuff. And I'll say it was like really cool stuff they're working on. But their offices were like peak, picture like a startup in San Francisco. Like picture it in your mind, what you would think like Pure Excess would be. And like that's what it was. So it was like a really great venue. And they pretty much let us have like free reign on the place. Like we were a pain in their ass for 4 days, but they let it happen and they had a great time and we had a great time and it was a really fun event. There were a ton of great runs there. From Mario Odyssey, the Rockman 2 race last night. Zallard with the arcade punch out was awesome. I mean there was a lot of cool stuff. So
yeah, I was hooked on watching it. The Calithon production values have gone way up every single time. Yeah, they're doing really great stuff there. So Andy, what have you been up to lately?
I went to PAX East this past week, and that was a lot of fun.
I knew you took a trip. I was sitting there. I went and looked back at the Calithon schedule. I was like, he wasn't at Calithon.
And no, I went to PAX East, and I also went to Asheville recently. PAX East was a ton of fun. I was expecting smaller PAX West, but it was pretty much just as big and full of tons of people.
Nice. So yeah, quite recently, so Andy is not new to Allegiance, right? You were on Allegiance previously.
Yes, I was on Allegiance for a couple months, like towards the end of summer last year.
Okay. Yeah, and you rejoined, I went back and found like all of the references. You rejoined on March 13th of this year. And then right after that, in quick succession, Allegiance picked up a lot more people, including GrandPOOBear, right?
Yes.
So that's really awesome, and it kind of goes in line. Andy being one of the, in terms of all of the people who have now been signed, Andy now gets the honor of being one of the earlier people, if you can believe that, considering the fact that it goes back as far as December 2015 with Clint Stevens. I think he was the very first person I could find. Clint says he thinks there might have been other people at the time, but I can't find any other examples of any other speedrunners being signed specifically to esports teams. But he was for Team Archon, which was a team that specialized in competitive Hearthstone in the US. And since there's really no competitive Hearthstone in the US, it basically died off pretty quickly. And then shortly after that, in November of 2016, that's when now Jordan, Indiana, at the time Striker, got picked up by Allegiance. And so can you guys talk a little bit about what Allegiance is? Do you know sort of all the ins and outs of the other stuff that they do aside from just signing really talented speedrunners?
The Rocket League team's awesome.
Yes, the Rocket League team is very good.
Yeah, the Rocket League team is really, really good.
I feel like I see a lot about the Rocket League team, but I think that that's mostly just Andy retweeting their Rocket League
that's
stuff.
probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they had an esports program. They had an esports program in August in 2017. It actually got shut down, I think, briefly, just due to funding issues, and then rebooted almost immediately after in February 2018. Now that they got picked up by Infinite Esports and Entertainment.
Yeah, their last tournament as an organization was like Call of Duty World Championships later last year.
Okay. Yeah, and then Trihex is with Tempo Storm. That was actually after Jordan, so that was in November. That was November 23rd of 2016. And then Andy Game picked up, sort of was the end of my notes as far as in the past. And so when Andy rejoined, that was kind of the wave that started everyone else. So that was Patty, Oats and Goats, and GrandPOOBear all got picked up by Allegiance in the subsequent days of March. And then Beast Coast actually picked up 5 speedrunners. So that's Chizo5, the Super Mario 64 speedrunner, Seven Sins, who is a Final Fantasy speedrunner and other RPG speedrunner, Carsey, who you guys might know from our episode on Resident Evil. He runs a lot of Resident Evil stuff. Majin Phil does Majora's Mask, and Caleb Hart, 42, does primarily Mega Man X games. So that's a huge list of really prominent speedrunners, actually. If you go back through that list, a lot of the bigger names, I would say, are probably now signed to esports teams. And I think that's really what has gotten people sort of curious about what's going on. There's a lot of confusion about it. If you go back and look for information about when Clint Stevens originally got signed all the way back in 2015, speedrunners kind of didn't know what to do with that. I mean, what... Do you guys remember seeing other people getting signed? Like, what's the perception of that?
I'll let Andy take this since he was signed before me.
I mean, a lot of people on the outside, especially in the speedrunning community, which like is still widely viewed as just like a hobby kind of thing. A lot of people don't really know what it means to be picked up and don't like have any sort of even like frame of perspective on what it might mean. So I know for me, when I got picked up, like, it was more of like a surreal thing. Like, man, I only thought like, you know, esports gamers got picked up. but yeah, it's definitely not something that's very known throughout the speedrunning community in general.
Were you the expert at Rocket League at the time that you are now? Did you suspect that they were picking you up for your Rocket League skills?
They knew that I had a lot of knowledge about the Rocket League scene. Not necessarily that I was good enough to be a Rocket League player on Team Allegiance, but that I knew a lot of people and I knew potential teams that they could pick up. So I think that might have been part of it, but...
It's kind of interesting looking at this list of names. Most of these people have at this point branched out far beyond speedrunning. I'd say the only people in this list who I would say are still... I guess more or less pure speedrunners in the sense that that's the 90% of their content, I would say, are probably Oats and Goats, Cheese, and Caleb Hart. The rest of them, I would say, have some varied content these days, and I wonder if that plays a part in it. I wonder if speedrunning
I feel like Oats is playing PUBG right now as we speak.
That's true. That's true. Oats has been playing a lot more PUBG lately. That's a good point.
Cheese is literally a PUBG streamer right now.
Yeah, he hasn't played Mario in God knows how long.
Speed ran? Come on, man.
Well, I guess that sort of proves my point. I guess what I'm getting at here is I wonder if speedrunning, while it's a great example of really good competitive gaming, and I would definitely be the first person to say that I think that speedrunning does have a place in the esports scene because it is a very competitive, it has this cooperative and collaborative flavor to it, but it is inherently a competitive event. And so I think it does belong in esports, but it kind of begs the question, is speedrunning enough? Is speedrunning enough to sort of get that size, get that momentum going where someone could see themselves being picked up by an esports team?
Well, I mean, I think I can tell you right now, like when Allegiance talks to us, they don't talk about our Fortnite games. Like
yeah,
like they didn't get us for Fortnite and all the other games we play. They got us for speedrunning. And I won't say that like I think the following in general is probably why they're interested in us. And I mean, I wouldn't lie. I would say they want to tap into a market they may not have been able to expose yet, which is speedrunners and speedrunner fans and speedrunning fandom. You know, I mean, like it or not, like speedrunning Reddit provides a lot of numbers and there's a lot of stuff going on there. And, you know, I think ultimately for them, they're looking, it's all a numbers based game for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that would be my and that's my assumption. They also could see a future of speedrunning that maybe we don't yet. You know, and they're trying to get ahead of the game and be prepared for it. But I mean, I have to think that's the number one thing is that they're just, you know, they're trying to get into a market that has numbers that they don't necessarily have that they want. You know.
Well, I mean, since you brought it up, let's jump around. Let's just sort of pop into that question. So what do you think esports teams are really seeing as the benefit of picking up speedrunners? Because I think that a lot of them have professed a genuine, and I do mean it, genuine and heartfelt interest in sort of growing the speedrunning scene. But speedrunning is, you know, inarguably a smaller scene. There's not as much viewership. There's the big events. There are big names in that community that do pull the numbers, but overall I would say speedrunning is itself not exactly a big viewer draw. So what do you think esports teams are getting in return for that sponsorship?
Well, I think one of the big things is that if you look at a lot of like competitive players in various games, a lot of them aren't actually streamers, at least not regularly. And so the big thing that they get from speedrunners is like, that's all we have. We stream. we stream everything we do. And that gets a lot more like public exposure than like, you know, a Rocket League team that, you know, is in like the underground practicing for months and months before they come out and like win a tournament or whatever. Like you don't see everything that goes into the tournament, but with speedrunning, you see everything from start to finish. I think that's very, I don't know, that's something that a lot of people are curious about, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Go for it.
No, I mean, I think Andy's completely right. You know, I think ultimately they do want to bring exposure to their team and other teams that they have going. And we're streamers, you know, we're content creators. And I think that esports teams are trying to find other outlets besides just sponsorships, you know, their own YouTube channels and everything else to, you know, I mean, ultimately make a profit for them, essentially.
Absolutely.
And speedrunners are still, you know what I mean? They're still on brand for them, I would say. And we do, like Andy said, we provide a lot of content, you know what I mean? Like, since I've been with Allegiance this month, like, they've probably been, you know, like, that name's been seen how many hours on my stream, you know what I mean? And that
yeah,
is
absolutely.
a good thing. It'd be, I mean, it's no different to a certain degree, I would say, than like, you know, a mouse sponsorship or a keyboard sponsorship to a certain degree. With that being said, it's a lot different in the fact that like they're invested in us and players, and they want to help us get better as players. And I think that's something like when Andy was talking about like the underground bunker. You know, I want to go to that underground bunker and see how we can help my gameplay, you know what I mean, at what I'm doing, and in my games, and I think that's something that's really cool that I wanna get a piece of, you know.
And it's definitely
I think one of the I was going to say, I think one of the interesting things about speedrunners is a lot of speedrunners do build their brand on their personality. There's certainly streamers out there who have their popularity because of their skill at the game, and as soon as they find themselves dethroned, if you will, some of that popularity will to an extent dry up. And I think one of the things that maybe makes speedrunning a little more attractive might be the fact that you don't have to necessarily worry that the speedrunners are a speedrunner is going to suddenly lose their following just because someone better comes along the next day. Maybe that's sort of an attractive point as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think also like having Andy, like everyone's played A Link to the Past. I don't know, like watching him see him do that the first time is really awesome and impressive.
For sure.
And, yeah, I mean they're into that. They're into the content. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. They're into the content. I mean, I think they also want us. I mean, they see that these events are getting bigger. You know what I mean? There's no doubt that the two GDQs are giant events, and ESAs are growing. Like they're certainly getting bigger and better every year. And I
Alathon's the
think
same way.
yeah, I think that there is, I mean, like having those. I mean, why would they not want, all the people like with. I mean, I don't think this will ever happen, but like all the people at GDQ wearing one of their jerseys. You know what I mean? That'd be really cool for them, I'm sure. And they look.
Yeah, I
at
was going to
those.
ask, how would you say that these sorts of sponsorships? I've actually seen a conversation between you and Cool Maddie on this topic,
Yeah.
like how this sort of integrates itself into Games Done Quick. Like obviously, one of the big draws, and I think one of the things that was initially confusing to people about speedrunners being picked up is that it's very obvious why, players of competitive games of other varieties are getting signed by esports teams. Esports teams can provide a certain amount of structure to organizing practice, coordinating tournament entry prices, and helping to make sure that players can get to those areas. But speedrunners don't really need those sorts of things in the same way. So the question is sort of the next step having esports teams saying, we'll pay for your entry into Games Done Quick. We'll fly you there if you get a run in, but we want you to wear your jersey while you're there and throw a plug in somewhere.
I mean, I don't know how to. I'm gonna let you take that one, Andy.
I mean, I don't really think anyone knows how it's actually going to get handled. Like, of course, if several Allegiance boys got runs into this coming GDQ, Pooh, Oats and Goats, and Jordan, who's actually indie on Twitch as of today, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, indie jig now, right?
But so like I wore my Allegiance jersey for last at GDQ. That was like I got signed like a week before SGDQ, and Connor shipped me like jerseys and all sorts of stuff. But I don't know if there's ever been like another runner that's had a run and also been sponsored by somebody. So like I just kind of wore my jersey and no one really thought too much of it. But this year there's a ton more runs and runners from sponsored people, so it'll be interesting to see people's
It definitely
reaction.
seems like an issue that's going to have to be navigated going forward. And
I would say, like, to a certain... I understand, like, if GDQ wouldn't want us promoting, like, especially something that's, like, against their own sponsors, you know what I mean?
For sure.
And I understand that to a point. But if they would, like, let's say, like, not take a run-in because I'm going to wear an Allegiance shirt or whatever, and I don't think they would. I like, there's no sign of that, obviously. Like, I think that's really obvious. Like, a bunch of us got runs in, like he said.
For sure.
I think Beast Coast has some runs in too. Like, Cheese has a run in, and I guess they were announced after GDQ, but still.
I think if they were really worried about it, there would have already been some sort of hardline stance on here's what you guys need to know. But
yeah,
I think that there's sort of a new era coming along, and I'm interested in seeing how it plays out, because I don't think GDQ has a reason to be against it, but at the same time, they, there's sort of like
I actually talked with with Allegiance before I signed about this specific topic, and I was very, like, adamant. Like, when I'm specifically at a charity event, I don't want to be shouting out, 14 products. Like, you know what I mean? I'll wear, wearing a shirt and wearing a jersey is one thing. Because, like, last year I wore a Young Bucks shirt. They're my favorite wrestlers. Like, that's no more advertising than anything else, to me. And I did shout them out. I talked to them, but, like, but I'm not going to be, like, throwing out, like, thank you, blah blah blah, and Bose headsets or whatever. Like, we don't have Bose headsets as our sponsor, but like, that's not something that's happening. You know what I mean? And I was very specific at charity events. Like, that's not it. If it was like a tournament where we're making money, I'd do that all day, like, whatever. But charity events are different for me personally, and that was something that I personally talked about with him. But, like, wearing an Allegiance shirt, I think there shouldn't be any issue with that for me personally. No. And if there was issues with that, especially when, if like, let's say they are paying for flights, if all these speedrunners that have runs in that are getting their flights paid for, that's a huge expense and a huge cost that I think it would be it'd be in really bad taste to kind of
not say, thanks to Allegiance for helping me get here.
Well, no, not for me to say thanks for Allegiance, but like just not even like if like GDQ one day put a hardline stance against like us wearing like esports jerseys or something, and I'm not saying that, not insinuating that they were, but if they did do something like that, I don't know, like I don't think that would necessarily be a fair thing. And
no, I agree.
You know what I mean? That would I just don't see that being an issue, you know. And with all that being like said, like who knows? I don't know how it's gonna go down. I do remember that conversation I had with Cool Maddie on about it, and you know, I personally am I'm always gonna stand with like runners and streamers. Like I'm always gonna side with them as content creators, because I think that there's not enough. Like personally for me, I've always said like there's not enough full-time speedrunners out there, and there's not enough people getting enough love as they deserve for speedrunning. And I don't know, I personally want to see more in any access or any avenue that can make it easier on the speedrunner to focus on doing it more often and full time and for their career and their passion. Like I am very pro those things. So
absolutely,
yeah, that's just me personally. And I know people are always going to be like, you don't want to monetize your hobby, but like somebody's monetizing this at levels, at lots of different levels. So I mean,
yeah. Might as well be you monetizing your own thing than someone else monetizing you for you.
That's my thing.
I also don't think GDQ issue is ever going to arise, because if you look at like GDQ as an event, and then like, you know, some esport tournament championship, like they're both events. The events have their own individual sponsors, completely separate from anyone else in the event. And the event, you know, says whatever they have to say for their own sponsors, but then you don't see like, you know, Cloud9 like having their players say stuff on esports streams or anything. I don't think it's going to end up being any different for us.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, we're not going to like turn into the end of a UFC fight where they're like, got to thank Milk and, you know. Yeah, I just don't see that happening for any of us, and just the way that it's currently set up.
It's kind of interesting to have seen right after this huge influx of new people being picked up by Allegiance that it was only 2 weeks later that Beast Coast announced their huge list as well of people who were getting picked up, and it kind of feels like, to a certain extent, not saying that all of this wasn't pre-planned and in earnest, it does feel like it's sort of a mad rush to grab people and fill out the rosters in certain ways. Specifically, I'm referring to the quick turnaround from Beast Coast in response to Allegiance. But my only comment on that is that, you know, Beast Coast is probably fine. Allegiance is obviously fine. Tempo Storm, to my knowledge, only has one speedrunner, Trihex. But, you know, what if other esports organizations, you know, pick it up and don't have that same good sense? They realize, you know, these are, you know, our people. We can put people in front of the, you know, camera at Games Done Quick for an hour and a half. It's not too hard for us to get them to plug something. So, you know.
I mean, I can say that. I can say that I had conversations with 3 other teams actually before I ended up going with Allegiance, and
okay.
None of those conversations, like some of them were bigger and some were smaller, and I think GDQ is obviously like a hot button topic for us personally, and I think we're also like, speedrunners are so scared to do anything, like not like scared to do anything at GDQ. I don't mean like that, but like we don't want to rock the imbalance, you know what I mean? We don't want to rock the awesome thing we have going where we're raising money for a good cause, you know, tremendous amount every year in any way either. So like I think like it means the same to us even though we're signed with an esports team, you know what I mean? So I think, I don't know, I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's going to
I think that's the important point, is that I think most speedrunners care enough about it to make sure it doesn't become an issue.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to help maintain any sort of balance that even potentially could become upset in the process.
I think the public is probably going to view it as a negative thing until they see something actually happen, because the public already has such a negative stigma on like GDQs are super unfun that like adding this will probably just make it worse. But I think that's just something that is going to be bound to happen no matter what happens in the speedrunning community.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much you can do to stop that from happening. So we talked a little bit about what esports teams are getting in return for the sponsorship, but how about the speedrunners themselves? I've spoken to the president of Allegiance just a little bit, Connor Hall. What I mean, I don't expect you guys to divulge every single detail, but just from your perspective, what's on your end for it? What do you get out of the partnership, and what draws you to being willing to participate in this partnership?
I'll let Andy go first on this.
They do offer a salary. One of the biggest things, honestly, for like us as content creators is the bigger platform that we get. Like, you know, we only have, well, Pooh is like the exception in our group, being Mr. Twitter verified, but like Allegiance tweeting, you know, stuff from me, stuff from Patty, even stuff from Pooh. Like, they're tweeting out to like, you know, 30,000+ people on Twitter. Like, we get a much larger stage for our content to be put out than we normally do. On a much more frequent basis. So that's really big for us in terms of like what they give us back, regardless of, you know, any sort of monetary stuff. But
yeah, I was actually surprised to find out that there was a salary involved. I don't know why I was surprised to find that out, but I kind of had imagined that it was more focused on sort of helping with social media promotion and then maybe helping out with attendance to events, which I guess is itself sort of a monetary benefit as well. But I mean, is there any sort of like, you know, covering trips to events and things like that that are outside of Allegiance itself? So helping you with travel to specifically speedrunning events and those sorts of things?
Yeah. I mean, that is, yeah. I mean, that's obviously like the thing,
right.
That a huge thing for
and then
us.
You know,
it has been kind of interesting looking at Allegiance's Twitter recently. I don't know necessarily whether or not that momentum will stay exactly the way it is right now, but it kind of comes back to what you were talking about before, that, you know, people like, you know, Rocket League streamers, CSGO streamers, Hearthstone streamers, whichever competitive event streamer or player, you know, they're not producing content all the time, and so there's not always things for them to be tweeting about. So if you actually go back and look at Allegiance's Twitter over the past few weeks, it's a solid wall of speedrunners and speedrunning events and videos of speedrunners doing something, or promotions for tournaments that are being played in, or marathons being played at. And so they really seem to be going all in on supporting their new speedrunners via their social media platform, which I think is really great.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say most tournaments happen on the weekends, and we give them something for the weekdays.
Exactly.
You know,
right.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean,
and we also
that's good. You gotta balance out their schedule.
Yeah, that's what I notice on the weekends. I'm like, man, it's all Rocket League this time. Arena of Valor right now, baby.
They also have, you know, a graphic designer person that we can use if we need. They have an editing person we can use if we need. And they also just like more people that we can brainstorm content ideas in general. Like, you know, we all have, you know, I could talk to Pooh about like, you know, hey, how should I like run this thing that I want to do? But the people from Allegiance, you know, aren't necessarily like, they're not streamers, so they don't see things the same way, but that's good because it gives like a completely fresh set of eyes and set of ideas that we can use to our benefit.
Very nice. So what do you guys see happening with speedrunning going forward? Like, how do you think this partnership is going to mature? I think that we haven't really seen a whole lot out of what Beast Coast necessarily has planned for their people that they picked up, but I would say Allegiance has really done a lot to promote speedrunning with what seems like it hasn't been invasive, I guess is the way I want to put it. It doesn't feel like Allegiance is overwhelming you guys in a way that is sort of like changing your content. It just seems like it's giving to you guys in a big way. And so how do you think that this sort of is going to affect speedrunning as a community? Do you think we'll see more people getting picked up? Do you think that we'll see this sort of being the next big grind? Is this going to be, you know, you see so many people, you know, road to partnership, and now that you got partner, are we going to see a brand new grind for getting picked up by an esports team, or what's next for our community?
I mean, well, I don't think like being on an esports team is going to be the be all end all for speedrunners, but I do see this being more the norm than the exception, honestly, because it makes sense. You know what I mean? People watch these games at the end of the day. Like, Cheese pulled 10K the other day when he was getting his world record for Mario 64. Not the other day, but like a month ago. Like, yeah, it's impressive. Like, when Andy's in a tournament, a randomizer tournament, he's getting pulling 2,000-3,000 people on his screen every day. Like we have eyeballs and other. There's tons of great runners out there. I hope it starts expanding out to where it can mean runners that are exceptionally good at games are getting more attention too, because I don't think that necessarily always happens. You know what I mean? And also, they get help with their stream too. Like, you know what I mean? Like the speedrunning team picks you up. They're gonna help outfit you so you look professional and look good.
Which is something a lot of speedrunners could really use.
I mean, I hate to say that. Like, I know people get mad
I
at
understand.
Me. I hate when people get mad at me. I feel like anytime you talk about money in speedrunning or monetizing your speedrunner, like not your speedruns, but just like it's kind of like a dirty word for the community in some ways. And I don't think it has to be, because I think we can still do a lot of good. Honestly, I think in some ways we can do more good if we have a bit more freedom with what we're doing here. And right. I hope more teams start investing in more runners and different runners from different games and runners that can cross over to different genres and do other things and support the community with more events and more opportunities, because I that's a future I'd like to see in a lot of ways.
For sure.
But I don't know. I think I don't know. I think this is the first drop in the bucket, personally.
I hope to see that. I know that there's been this sort of big argument over the past year in the speedrunning community that one thing that we're really doing a disservice to ourselves for is that a lot of us are content creators, in the sense that we're constantly on Twitch, we're constantly producing, just by virtue of the fact that speedrunning kind of requires, to a certain extent, constant activity to progress. But there's not a lot of sort of cultivated content being created. There's not this notion of content with that same level of thoughtfulness that you see from people who focus more on YouTube, where it's a very polished product. And hopefully what we see from this is that, some of these more well-known and capable streamers find themselves now with the resources that allow them to produce that polished content that can really help speedrunning outreach, I guess, is my point.
I would completely agree with that. I think this is one of those mutually beneficial relationships.
How about you, Andy? Have you enjoyed your partnership and then subsequent other partnership?
Yes, they've both been great, and I'm excited to see the future that esports will have in speedrunning.
Yeah.
Awesome. So before I set you guys free, if you already know an actual answer to this question, obviously you're not going to give me that answer, though feel free to drop a hot scoop right here on the Frame Savers. But who's getting picked up next?
Just my guess. I'll give you my guess. I don't know. I did know the Beast Coast guys, but I don't know who.
If you have a hot scoop for me, you can give me a hot scoop, but I'm interested in knowing, who do you think has the chops? Who's in the right place right now to be the next person to be picked up by an esports team?
I bet a lot of teams would love to get Darbian, but I don't think Darbian. I don't know. You know what I mean? He's just. I don't know what he would even think about it, because I don't know.
That young boy doesn't have a competitive bone in his body.
He doesn't have a competitive bone. But that's the thing. I think that's the thing, though. Like, they didn't hire us to, they didn't sign us to kick everyone's ass. You know what I mean? They signed us to keep doing what we're doing in a lot of ways. Like, that was like a big thing, was just, keep doing what we're doing in a lot of ways. Yeah. So
you're probably right. Darbian would probably be a good fit, and I would not be surprised if I asked him privately for him to tell me that he has been reached out to by all of these groups already.
I wouldn't be surprised either, honestly.
How about you, Andy? Do you have a hot take on who's up next?
I think if he cleaned up his act a little bit, like, probably the most recognizable name in speedrunning from anywhere is Spike Vegeta. And I think
Okay.
he has a pretty good shot if he cleans some stuff up.
You know, like with Spike too, he's such a personality
Yes.
that I think that makes it so huge. Like he's like the number one talker about speedrunning, honestly, you know?
He's like the one guy that will get recognized multiple times at any event, regardless of what the event's for. Because everyone knows him as the voice of GDQ.
Yeah, he's I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop on that one. That would be a nice one to see. He could do a lot of good for the community, and having access to all the resources to produce really nicely cultivated content would do us all a lot of favors, for him to be the person doing outreach rather than, YouTube right now.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so I'm going to turn you guys loose. I just want to ask if you want to plug your stuff.
I mean, we got to plug Allegiance, I think. We have
yeah,
to.
I think so.
Go for it.
Yeah, Allegiance, go get a jersey. You can actually get a jersey and put me or Andy's name on the back if you want. So
yeah,
that'd be cool. I'm really hoping to see a Allegiance jersey in the crowd at
hell yeah.
GDQ.
They also have really cool merch. They have like one of the comfiest windbreaker jackets that I've ever owned in my entire life, and it looks super slick, and I love it.
I will say that the Allegiance brand has like the nicest color scheme.
I like the color scheme. Yeah.
Yes.
I really like the color scheme.
Really, that feels so weird to say it that way, but I mean, it's really
I'm not gonna lie.
nice.
That factored into my decision.
I understand.
No, it was that I could work their color scheme into my existing color scheme already.
Yeah, because you already have like orange and dark in your...
Yeah. It factored into it, I'm not going to lie.
How about your individual stuff? What you guys got going on you want to plug?
We're both in the Zelda randomizer tournament. Andy's going to go far, and I'm just hoping to win a game. So you can check us out on that. You can check out my stream at twitch.tv/GrandPOOBear, or you can check out my podcast, the Warp World Podcast. You guys, if you've listened to this, you kind of already heard an episode, honestly, so you may as well just listen to them all. You can check that out at podcast.warp.world. And then follow me at GrandPOOBear on literally every social media imaginable, all of them. Just
every one
all
of them.
I can't talk.
Yeah, as Pooh said, I'm in the randomizer tournament. I'm in the Link to the Past No Major Glitches tournament, vying for a top seed in the bracket stage. I think I'm pegged in to have the number 3 seed out of 64 if everything stays the way it is. Twitch.tv/Andy.
Find you.
Everything else is Andy Lasso because I decided to brand appropriately recently. And
you got the hot Andy name on Twitch a few years ago. That was
that
was a good get.
Yeah,
that was a good get.
I feel like those are like the best names.
I have to ask.
I
earned that one. I won a Twitter contest back in 2013.
Oh, one of the name change contests.
I won the 3rd one they ever did. Twitch used to tweet, retweet this tweet, and for every 100 people that retweet it, we will give away 1 name change. So less than 1% chance at a maximum is the chance you're getting to win a name change. And me and 8 of my friends won them while they did them. It was nuts.
That's incredible. I have to ask you, I was just thinking about it. So I'm sure you guys know Supreme, twitch.tv/Supreme. He gets offers quite regularly for people to buy his username.
Yes.
Quite generous offers for people to buy his username. In fact, I would have caved a long time ago for some of those offers.
I probably would sell it. I get why that happens.
Yeah, Andy, do you get the same sort of offers ever?
I get offers, but they're different. I've never gotten an offer to buy my Twitch account. Although if Andy Milanakis wanted to offer me a lump sum, then, we could talk. But the offers that I do get, there's this really famous IRL streamer girl who, there's this super famous clip of her getting a $6,900 or $6,969.69 donation live on stream, and she screamed so loud that she blacked out. And the person who donated as the name Andy. So I actually get requests to pay people's medical bills and to buy people new computers because I clearly just have so much money to throw around that I could throw $7,000 at this girl on Twitch.
That is the opposite offer. Usually people are paying you, but they want you to pay them.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
I probably get like messages or whispers or people coming in my chat maybe once a week with a request. It's actually nuts.
That's amazing. All right, well, on that note, I'm Author Blues. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube as Author Blues. You can find the podcast at www.theframesavers.com, where you can find access to our Discord, our Patreon, our SoundCloud, our iTunes, and our Twitter, and find us saying and doing stupid things literally everywhere on the internet. Thanks, as always, to Brian Morgenthaler for producing our podcast. He's the reason why it sounds so good and why it's always thrown together very promptly. You can find him on BMorgs TV at Twitch and Twitter. And any last words from you guys?
No.
Starflex.
Perfect.
Yeah, Starflex. No. This is. I'm glad to continue my streak and widen my gap as, 4 or 5 time guests. I don't know. I gotta count.
Second place isn't even close, Pooh. We have to blacklist you from this podcast.
I know, and I already know I got one more lined up after SGDQ. So I mean, it's just like I'm ready to go.
So Pooh is to Frame Savers what I was to the Final Split, essentially. I guess hosted the Final Split like 4 times before I was ever a guest on it myself.
That's incredible.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, signing off. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.